More than a year ago, this video popped up in my YouTube homepage. Mark Rober's flying graduation cap immediately got my attention, but it could definitely use some improvements. I wanted my graduation cap to be more stealthy. This meant smaller motors and smaller propellers. Eventually I came up with the following design: a carbon fiber frame with 4 2.5-inch propellers and some even smaller motors. Now I could start refining my design in CAD. I have a kind of love-hate relationship with my CAD software, but don't we all? Finally, I could start the actual building process. When working with carbon fiber, I keep it wet to avoid breathing in carbon dust. I felt like this was the best approach given the limited tools to my disposal. If you have any feedback or tips whatsoever, please let me know. And while we're at it, I might as well apologize for my terrible accent.
It's like the drop in the hammer who's totally full.
At this point, I'm gluing in the little carbon fiber corners that give the frame a little bit more rigidity. Actually, I was very surprised with how this frame turned out. It was very lightweight and way more sturdy than I had originally anticipated. With the frame ready, I could shift my attention to the middle section that holds all of the electronics. Regarding the electronics, I just used standard drone components for 3-inch FPV quads. I also used two 11-volt LiPo batteries that I wired in series for some extra juice. I really wanted to hide the camera while the drone was not flying, so I made a little flip-up mechanism with a servo that I connected to the LED pins on the flight controller. The only thing left to do now was configure the software and prepare everything for its maiden flight. Now, visually it looked pretty good and everything seemed to work fine. There was only one slight problem: the weight. In hindsight it's pretty obvious, but I used way too many non-structural 3D printed parts, completely negating the other weight savings. Unfortunately, while editing this video, it's been almost a year, so I lost a video of my first flight attempt. But honestly, you're not missing out. It was really pathetic. The cap barely got off the ground because it was just way too heavy. But then I remembered.
La simplicity y l'ultima sophisticación.
That's why I decided to do the following. Strip the cap completely of its non-essential parts, making the cap about 250 grams lighter. To actually make it look like a graduation cap without adding too much weight, I did 4 things. First of all, I made new truss tubes out of a lightweight PLA that foams up when printed.
Nice.
I also added RGB lights that illuminate the propellers for absolutely no reason whatsoever. To form the top of the cap, I used laser cutted foam because it weighs virtually nothing and it doesn't have any structural purpose anyways. It was pretty tricky to get the laser settings right, but it worked out in the end. After that, I painstakingly painted them black by hand because spray paint seemed to partially dissolve the foam. I'm not sure why. Since I still wanted the camera to be hidden and I didn't want to use a heavy servo mechanism again, I made it so that the camera flipped up with a little spring after manually being triggered. For some extra spice, I made the whole top of the cap rotate so the propellers are also covered, further selling the illusion. The big disc on top slots into circular grooves on the base, and the camera is held down with the locking pin. When the user pulls the cords on the side of the cap, the top rotates and the locking pin gets pulled out, releasing the spring-loaded camera. Finally, the text can be removed with a quick pull. Lastly, I bought a cheap graduation cap off Amazon, cut it open and attached it to the underside of the graduation cap with some Velcro. So this is the finished product. I honestly couldn't be happier with the way it turned out. In my humble opinion, it looks way better than Mark's version, but that's obviously irrelevant if the thing doesn't fly. So after repairing the radio receiver that I managed to smoke last minute, it was finally time to fly.
Yeah.
And well, it definitely flies. It even flies pretty well if I say so myself. That said, in comparison to a real FPV drone, it flies basically like a brick. Anyway, I have some cool clips to show you. As you might have noticed, this is my first ever video. It took me a fair bit longer than I expected, and it turns out that drone parts are quite expensive. But at least I learned a lot in the process. Now I only have to graduate. Next time I'll put this thing in acro mode and then we'll really find out what this thing is capable of. For now, just like this video so Mark Rober sees it.